Welcome to the Holistic Health Bites podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Nicholson, crime scene investigator turned functional health investigator. This podcast is here to share bite-sized episodes and unique interviews on a wide variety of health topics to empower, enlighten, and educate you to live your best, most vibrant life. Disclaimer: all information you hear on this podcast is for information only and constitutes individual opinions of the person speaking. This should not be taken as medical advice. Being a listener of this show does not initiate a practitioner-client relationship between you and the hosts or panelists on this show. Please discuss these topics with your medical professionals before making any changes to your health. Okay, let's dive in. Welcome back to the Holistic Health Bites podcast. Today, we're going to have an interesting conversation about kind of conventional medicine combined with holistic medicine, as well as digestion and lots of fun topics. So I have a special guest today, Charis. So welcome, Charis. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about your background? I know you started in sort of the conventional model as a nurse. So can you kind of walk us through how you became a nurse, why, and then how did you sort of transition into more of the holistic side of things?
Sure. So I actually went straight out of high school. I went to college. I actually have a degree in exercise science too. That was a long time ago. But so I have that background, and then I went to nursing school about 8 years later. And I what got me into nursing is I was just really not happy doing what I was doing. I worked for a big health club chain, and it was interesting because I was a personal trainer and I kind of gravitated towards taking care of some of our members who had like neurodegenerative diseases, MS, and had had strokes and things like that. They're like, oh, Charis will take care of them. And so it's kind of interesting when you look back on it. But my grandmother had cancer, and I took her to a lot of her treatments and, cared for her during that time. She was in her 80s, so she was a lot older. But it really was that experience that kind of gave me the idea to go to nursing school. And so I was like, I'm doing this, I'm all in. And I moved halfway across the country and went to nursing school. And from the minute I went to nursing school, I knew that that was what I was meant to do, that meant to take care of people. It just felt very intrinsic in my core. So I did like an accelerated program because I already had a bachelor's degree in something else. And so just did it pretty quick. I went to Creighton University. And so that was interesting moving. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so I moved to the Midwest, which was a little bit of a culture shock. So it was just a very interesting time in my life. And, I worked as a nurse for many years. I was an oncology nurse, took care of cancer patients. I worked in bone marrow transplant initially, and it was a pretty intense place to work. But I love that world very much, taking care of cancer patients. It really was just such a gift to not just the patient, but their family. And as many people know who have been touched by cancer, it's just a crazy time in someone's life. So I did that. We moved to Denver, and then I had my boys, and really that's kind of when I took some time off work, and I really was having my own health challenges. I had them really during my pregnancy too. I actually had a really big stressor. I had a family member who had a very bad accident, was in the ICU and at Craig Hospital for a long time. And that was, I think, a catalyst to a lot of things. It wasn't obviously the thing, but we know that stressors are hugely impactful to health and often can be kind of that trips people into, where the body is kind of like screaming for help. So I was on bed rest with both of my kids. Obviously, lots of hormonal things. My gut was a mess. So really, after they were born, it was me trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And a lot of my symptoms were digestive in nature. And so I had a lot of tests. I was very connected, obviously knew a lot of amazing doctors and people to help me, but there was nothing wrong with me. All my tests were normal. I know we've heard this many times. It's just such a common theme, but, I just didn't want to take that for an answer. I was like, I feel miserable. My energy was terrible. I had horrible digestive complaints. And so the first thing I did, actually, I had a pretty good GI doc, and he was like, if you stop drinking red wine and stop drinking coffee, which it sounded terrible to do both of those things at one time, you might get some relief. And I was like, okay, it took me a while to wrap my head around it. And then I ended up doing it. And so I think that was kind of my initial glimpse of like, oh, withdrawing these things, which we could talk about that too, isn't always the best way to go about things. I mean, sometimes it does help to remove stressors, but I really like to build people up too, and to have support them with nutrients and different things rather than just taking everything away. But that changed things for me. And then my dad was very sick. Both of my parents have had, towards the end of their life, just like really not great health. And so I was just always had that on my mind. And we were on our way home from an appointment, and I drove by a sign, the Nutrition Therapy Institute sign, when it used to be in Denver. And I was like, I went home and Googled it, and I literally attended the info session, and I'm like, I'm going to school there. And initially it was really just to heal myself. I was like, I feel like this is a missing piece and I need to learn more about this. And when I was in school, I just couldn't believe, my mind was blown. Like, how can I have so much knowledge about the body and not know any of this? And really when I reflect on that now, it was really more about like the interconnectedness of the body, that the body is not like a liver or a nervous system or a gut. The body is intimately connected in every way. And I think that makes it really challenging. And I can see why medicine is the way that it is, to compartmentalize things is really important in some ways, to try and like do treatment the way that doctors do. But we cannot ignore all these symptoms. And I think what makes things tricky sometimes is that people have different symptoms for the same problem. It's exacerbated in different ways. Whereas I might have bloating and you have headaches, for example. And so I think that makes it tricky. And so that's when I really realized that, like, it was a huge aha moment. I was like, okay, makes so much sense to me. I mean, I think if I would have redo my life and do it over again, I can see myself being like a naturopath or something like that because of the way that I view things. But my journey is what it is, and I'd never give up my nursing experience and all of the people that I took care of. But it was just really my own health. And then it was on a mission to support my family. And then I was just like, I have to help other people with this. I can't just be like, oh, it's a thing,
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And the fact that you were a nurse and you have that perspective of the more conventional model and hospital care and cancer of all things, you have a different perspective than someone who maybe just started out in nutrition or exercise, which you did start in exercise, but you have that whole conventional knowledge to bring to your clients, because most of us are going to interact with both sides of this. We're going to have to deal with conventional medicine in some ways, accidents, injuries, surgeries that are needed, those kinds of things. We're going to need that. But there's this whole world of things that we focus on in the holistic and functional side of things that they don't really talk about a whole lot. They don't talk about real adequate nutrition very much. They don't talk about exercise very much. They don't talk about sleep and stress and all the sources of stress and all of these other things that play in. And so I think your background, being able to kind of marry those two and talk about the pros and cons of both sides, is really valuable for your clients.
Yeah, I just am so passionate. I tend to get a lot of healthcare people that come to me just because of my background and people I know and, friends of friends, referrals. And I think that they appreciate that I know that side, and that I just view things in a different way than the way that we were trained. And I understand. I mean, I really never get into doctor bashing or anything like that, because that's how docs are trained. They're trained to treat patients in the way that they have learned through evidence and, with pharmaceuticals and all those things. And there's a lot of effective outcomes that happen. But when you're talking about like chronic disease and a lot of the things that people suffer from today, that's not what those treatments were designed for, right? Like really the original medical model is to treat people from, like you said, acute illness, injury, things like that. And so our medical model isn't really, that's not how it was developed. And so we have to really look at things differently. And it has changed so much. Like I tell people all the time, I've been a nurse for 20 years. And when I first became a nurse, there was an occasional patient that would say, can I have acupuncture treatment during my chemo? Or can I have, my therapy dog or whatever? And it was always like, no way in heck, like that is not happening. And now you go into an infusion center. I was actually there like at the hospital not very long ago. And I always go through and say hi. And I know a lot of people still that work there where I worked. And people are getting massages, acupuncture, there's therapy dogs, there's like essential oils, it's all of the things, and it's so much more welcomed. And I think, if you talk to providers, most providers now, they might not know what to do with those things, but they are more open to listening, because we always had, the pharmacists are a huge aspect of an oncology team. And so everything always had to be cleared through pharmacy. And it was always a no, like, no, because they don't know. And there wasn't a lot of information and there wasn't a lot of evidence. And the ultimate priority for the patient is safety. And if we don't know, then we're going to say no. You can't take X herb or whatever thing you've been taking forever. And those things are really changing. I think that they're getting more training and they're bringing experts in, herbalists and naturopaths and people who have knowledge of these compounds, and they're doing some studies. And because they see that, the quality of life that people experience is better when they can employ some of these things, that is really making their health from a very well-rounded perspective. So it's definitely changing. I think in the next 20 years, it's only going to be even better for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective. And I love hearing that that's actually changing in the hospital setting. I'm not in a hospital very often, so that's a great thing to hear that that's happening. And I guess I have seen that a little bit with some family members that have had surgeries and stuff, that they are being offered dry needling or acupuncture and those kinds of things before surgeries, or kind of in that healing process. So I guess I have seen it, but maybe not to the same level you have. And I love hearing that they're more open to that and that it's actually happening. And probably there are some practitioners that are even recommending it now, that aren't just saying okay to it if somebody else asks, but they're actually recommending it now. And I think that's so valuable, because sometimes the patients don't know that those things are possible. Sometimes the doctors don't know those things are possible. And the more we can just get people to ask the questions and spur the studies and share their experiences, then the faster that movement will happen, and we can really marry those two together. I think that's really valuable.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's pretty incredible to see the change.
So now you focus a lot more on kind of digestive wellness, since that was such a big piece for you. So tell us a little bit about, it doesn't have to be your personal story, but just maybe some of the things that you're seeing in where people go wrong with digestion. Does it always show up as digestive symptoms, or how would you know if it's a digestive issue?
That's such a great question. So now in my practice, I really do, like, people know that I focus on digestion. So I definitely get a lot of clients with the lens of like, I have some sort of digestive issue that's really not, I don't feel well. But I would say that I definitely also get some people who have more like systemic type symptoms, headaches, mood issues, either depression, anxiety, skin issues are super common. And you and I know, and many people may be listening to this, that those are all connected to the gut. And we probably don't have time to go into all the details on that, and I'm sure you've done other episodes on that, but really everything is connected to the gut. And so the whole thing with digestion, I think what really helped me to focus on it is because I went through restorative wellness. I'm the first class, just like you. And my mind was just kind of blown from the fact, I don't know, it must have just been some sort of like the stars aligned or something, because I'm in class. It's nothing new. Like I've learned this before, but for whatever reason, I was like, this is it. And I had some clients who had, good success, but maybe not exactly what we had both hoped. And so you're always kind of wondering, like, what's the missing link, right? And so I really kind of doubled down on the digestion and also the nervous system component of just someone's health, because I think, and I think it's tricky because people come to you and they don't know you, but they're trusting you enough to at least start talking and having a conversation and maybe wanting to be a client. And I get it. Like, we have to build that trust. And so they're not going to, most people don't share like, oh, I have horrible stress or I'm super anxious. They might say I have anxiety or whatever, but you don't really get the real details until a little while in. And so, but I use some questionnaires and some assessment to help me kind of figure that out. And I pretty much tell everybody now, there is a nervous system component to all digestive issues. And so we have to, at the minimum, address that. And so even if we just address it from a very, kind of bird's eye view, that is a starting point, and then we can build on it from there. And every single time, you get a little bit deeper with a client and know them a little more, and things come out, and it doesn't even surprise me anymore. I'm just like, okay, I get it. And I have some great ways that I like to refer people. Obviously therapy, and a lot of my clients are in therapy with a great therapist. I love to use hypnosis. I have a wonderful hypnotherapist that I work with. We trade, refer clients quite a bit to each other, and she's amazing. And I was a terrible sleeper for a long time because my boys were a year apart and I just didn't sleep for years. And then it was a lot of other things. And so she really helped me with that. So I believe very strongly in the hypnosis and the rewiring of some of those old habits and old thought processes. But I can't always do all of that, but I have kind of a good starting point of how I like to help people to not only manage it, but also to understand, because I think I was the person that was like, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. Everything's good. I'm kind of type A, just shove it under the carpet. And I'm not fine. My nervous system is kind of fried, I'm having trouble getting going in the morning. I can't make it through the day, I felt all of that. I still sometimes have those moments, and I have to be aware and understand my own body and be like, okay, this is your message. Your body is telling you to stop or slow down. So
what are some of the things that you recommend for people who, I 100% agree with you. Everyone has a nervous system component. Yeah. We're not even aware of how stressed we are. We just live in a constantly stressed out state that it seems like everything is fine. And we're not necessarily choosing to ignore it. We're just completely oblivious to it because we're so just in that world. So what kinds of things would you recommend for people to get a hold of that and to increase that awareness?
I think some big things. So I'm broken record. My children are 12 and 13, and they just roll their eyes at me all the time because I'm like, chew your food. So I believe very strongly in the parasympathetic state for digestion. I can't even tell you how many people are like, I'm so bloated. And so I'm like, chew your food and sit down and relax at a table or a counter or something and slow down and eat your meal. And within 2 weeks, they're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. It's just amazing, right? So I think some of those foundational things are so important. And in our society, we're used to eating on the go. We're working while we're eating our lunch or breakfast or whatever. I used to walk around the kitchen and eat my breakfast. That was my thing when my kids were little. And so, I think we have to really rewire those habits. And it just takes, again, the awareness to know, what am I doing and what impact can I make? So chewing your food is huge. Like many experts will be like, chew 15 to 20 times a bite. I don't tell people that because it drives me crazy when they're chewing their food like one time per bite and then you're going to go to 15. Like, that's not realistic. So, I'm like, where are you at now? And let's just try and improve on that. And then, the whole thing with sitting down is huge, and not in front of the TV or the computer if possible. And then taking like 3 to 5 slow, deep breaths. Like, they are doing so many studies on breathing now. It is incredible. You can go to Google Scholar or PubMed or whatever people like to look at and just type in like breathing, and it's so awesome. So they've really shown how it down regulates your nervous system. Your pulse goes down, your breathing slows, and so that's the down regulation that we need to be able to digest our food. So that's really kind of like paramount. I know that you teach those people the same thing. And then I really love yoga nidra. So I think on the flip side of the beginning of the meal, we need to digest after the meal. And so I think it's a little tricky sometimes, because sometimes when people have blood sugar issues, they're like, oh, I need to go for a walk, or I need to, be active to burn off that blood sugar or the excess blood sugar or whatever. And I think that that's a fine strategy. Like, you can do both, really. You could go for a short walk and then you can come back and rest. And so this one was one of the hardest things for me, but one of the things that I found the most impact. And so yoga nidra isn't really yoga. It's basically just laying on a yoga mat or a couch or a chair or whatever and listening to, you could do it in silence, obviously, but there's so many guided ones on YouTube, or I'm sure there's a zillion apps. And you're just listening to someone kind of take you through that time where you're, breathing, focusing on just relaxing. And it just allows your body to digest. Like, if you're running from the lion and in a sympathetic state, your body cannot digest and extract nutrients. Like, it is just not efficient at doing that because it doesn't know what's going on. It's not going to rest and digest. So that's another thing. Breakfast is really hard. Like, most people can't do that after breakfast. But lunch, I really, really try and get people to do it after lunch. Just take 10 minutes and just chill, And it's interesting to see what happens. A lot of people fall asleep, which is okay, or 10 minutes. But you notice a difference in your energy in the afternoon too, right? And your body can actually slow down and digest. So that's probably one of my favorite things. A lot of people have like yoga practices, and, people are nervous. They're like, oh, I have to meditate for half an hour or yoga for an hour. And I'm like, no, like, if you like to do those kind of activities or you want to give it a try, just start with a short amount of time. So I love Yoga with Adriene on YouTube. She's hugely successful. And one of the things I love about her is that you can do like a 10-minute video. And you can do something very simple, and you can do something harder. And so just pick something that's, feels good to you at the end of your day, to start your day, like whatever it is. But really, that awareness of like, how am I doing? How am I feeling? Is one of the most important things, because then when you feel like you're in that kind of like tense state, you can do some of those breathing exercises and calm down. Like, I had a dude like behind me in the car the other day, like honking his horn and all mad, and it just like kind of revs you up, right? So I'm just like trained to do it now. My body's just like, okay, like a couple deep breaths, and you can do that anytime. I've taught my kids to do this. You're in school and you're anxious, or you have to take a test or whatever. No one's paying attention to you. Like, you're not going to be seen as weird. You're just taking some deep breaths. It's amazing.
It is. And it's so simple. It's free. Yeah. It's accessible to anyone. It's so simple to do. And you can do it 100 times a day if you want to. Like, exactly. There's no limit.
You just really can't. I mean, people think that it has to be something complex or something very like strategic or whatever. And you really cannot ignore how important the foundations are. And I would consider that a foundational type of
100%.
thing that you
Yeah.
can do.
And as practitioners, we kind of love to geek out on the complex stuff, but the reality is none of that works if you haven't addressed the foundations.
That is an excellent point.
So you can get as fancy and complicated as you want to get. It won't work until you do the basics.
It's so true. Like you
basics.
can't just, I will occasionally have someone come to me and they're just very upfront and like, hey, can you just tell me what supplements to take, like to lose weight or to, get rid of my bloating? And I'm like, that's not how it works. Like you can take some supplements and it may help you a little bit. You might get a little bit of relief, but you're not fixing the problem. Like we don't, in holistic health, we don't do Band-Aids, we're really trying to figure out what is going on and what support does your body need so that it can heal, because your body can heal itself. Like it is hardwired for homeostasis, which just means like balance basically. And so, as you get older, you're going to have, more years of insult of just life and like all the things we're exposed to. But still, I've seen some pretty miraculous things, people just adding like nutrients to their diet. Like they feel so much better, So
yeah, it really.
The other thing I'm really into lately, and I kind of got into this with my sleep issue, and people sometimes think I'm a little bit crazy because they're like, I came to you for my bloating, but I really strongly believe in morning light and the whole circadian rhythm. So really, you have to view your day as like a 24-hour day. And it really should, like I get up around 5:30 usually. So a lot of times it's dark still, most times of the year. But if you're going outside as soon as it gets light, and luckily we're both in Colorado, so it's usually sunny here. So some people who are not in as sunny of a climate just need a little bit more time. You go outside and you let that light come through your eyeballs. You don't have to stare at the sun. You just, don't wear sunglasses. Don't, just be open to the light. Don't be in the shaded area. And it is amazing how that really helps to kind of just reset that time clock in our body that's so hardwired. It is just, I can't even tell you the number of people that are like, this has had a huge impact on my sleep, on my energy, on my digestion, because it kind of just gets your body going. Your body is like, oh, okay, it's morning. It's time to get going. And a lot of people kind of have trouble getting going in the morning. And so I just love that as like a hack. It's super simple. It's easy. You can do it in your PJs. Let's be honest, it doesn't have to be like get dressed and whatever. So that's another one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, I love that one. And yet again, free, simple, so easy. Yeah. You just walk outside for a few minutes. Yeah. It's so easy. Yeah. Exactly. And if you compare that with like grounding, where you have bare feet, like directly on the ground, even better.
Oh yeah.
Walk out into your yard for a minute.
Totally.
Like, it's really that simple. So I love these tips. This is so valuable for just simple, basic foundational things that really do move the needle. Now, are you going to feel like amazing the first day you do it? No. Yeah. But over time, over even a short period of time, you can tremendously turn things around with these little simple hacks.
It really takes consistency. I think that's, that obviously. And I think as, that's part of where our medical model is like, oh, you have high blood pressure, you have headaches from that. Here's a blood pressure pill, lowers your blood pressure pretty instantly. And you might have a, resolution of your headache. So people are just kind of conditioned for that. And that's what we're used to. And so this is different. What we do is, really supporting the body so that it can rebalance. And none of this happened overnight. And so we really have to give ourselves time and opportunity. And if you are coming into this with the right mindset, it really is, you can't do it wrong. And you're a human being. So, you fall off the wagon, you have a great routine or whatever, and then one morning you don't go outside, who cares? Just tomorrow morning, go back outside. It's not really that complicated. And so I really just preach consistency. And if, some people like to have like a spreadsheet or they keep track of everything or like a chart on the wall or whatever you need to like help you feel like, wow, I've made a lot of progress. I went outside every day for a month or whatever, and I feel so much better. That's really the key, because the way our human behavior works is that we need that connection to be like, oh, okay, like I'm doing this thing and it's leading to this other thing.
Yeah. And I think I'm with you. I always talk about consistency is far greater than perfection.
Yes.
We're not striving to be perfect. That's what leads people to quit. When you like don't do it for a couple of days because whatever happened, and then you just stop doing it altogether. No, what matters is how consistently you do it. So even if you miss a day here and there, keep going, keep doing it.
It's so true. And people are always kind of surprised because I always do consults with people when we first start working together. And so I look at everything and then I give them recommendations and I kind of prioritize it in my mind, but I always meet them where they are because what their goals are is obviously important too. But they're always surprised because they're like, wait, I don't have to do all these things at one time. I'm like, no, I think you should start with A, and then maybe in a week or two work on B, like, because you are not going to be able to do all the things all at once. Like you can't do the 180 and expect it to stick. It just doesn't work. So, taking those gradual steps and being consistent is really the best way.
Yeah. And if you did jump into the deep end and try to do all the things at once, you're adding stress to the picture. So not only are you not actually accomplishing anything by doing all the things at once, but you actually could be making it worse. So it's much, much better to baby step your way in 100%. Maybe that's a few days and you're like, oh, this is easy. I could do another one. Maybe you can go faster, but I'm with you. I would not add, 20 things all at once. That's a recipe for failure for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's just like a retraining. There's so many people who that's just kind of how they're used to it, like ready, set, go kind of thing. And I was, a little bit like that too. But as soon as I got like some success not doing that, then I was like, oh, okay, this way is so much better. It might feel a little bit slower, but in the end, it's not slower at all because you actually make a lot more progress because you're not quitting, like I don't believe in on the wagon, off the wagon. I just believe in the wagon. Like you're on. Sometimes you might be a little closer to the edge, or maybe if you just got back from vacation, your diet's kind of off and you're not feeling super awesome. So you know what to do. You get back in the middle of the wagon and you're like feeling good again. It's like we don't have to fall off and start on Monday. That was always my thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to start on Monday. And it's like Tuesday, I'll wait till Monday. And just that mentality doesn't really serve you.
No, and there's something magic about Mondays.
No.
That's just a societal start of the week thing. It has absolutely nothing to do with how successful you can be.
That's just your brain.
Exactly. It's just a thought error occurring in your head that a lot of us struggle with, but it's definitely one to let go of because there's nothing magic about starting on a Monday or the first of the month or the first day of the year or any of those things.
Right.
Just start. You will get to the end faster if you just start somewhere.
I completely agree.
I love it. Any other kind of words of wisdom or things you'd like to leave the audience with before we wrap up here?
I would just say, I feel like it's never too late. I have a couple older ladies like in their early 80s as clients. And it's just, when they came to me, it's just so refreshing, because I'm like, gosh, I want to be like that when I'm their age, because they're really like, I know that I've been through these things and had these health issues or whatever, but I really want to improve my health and live as long as I can and really in the best health that I can. And so I just was so inspired by that. And I think it's never too late to like make some changes. And if you really feel like it's going to be a lot, like if you're kind of the, couch potato, eating standard American diet, not sleeping great, whatever, and you feel like you want to make changes, just again, like the baby steps, and hiring someone to help you can be really impactful. I always tell people, nothing of what we teach is like a secret. You can find out really all of this information. It's really the reason that you would use one of us as a practitioner to support your health journey is because you want someone to tell you what to do and in the most efficient way. So that's really kind of like what our expertise is figuring out the priorities and helping people. But if you can't do that or you don't want to do that, which is fine, just literally start walking, start Googling some recipes. Like, what if I didn't eat McDonald's? What would I eat? Like start with one meal. There's so many things that you can do. And once you kind of get that confidence and get that momentum and, feel like, oh, I can do this. I tackled this issue. Let's do another one. And that's what happens. There's inspiring stories all the time of people really turning their health around.
Yeah, you just have to keep in mind that you're not going to lose 300 pounds, by adding one little thing, but you're making progress. So don't give up if you don't see these like amazing life-changing results with the one thing you've added. Add something else, and then add something else, and then add something else. And eventually you will get to your goal. And how long that takes so much depends on, what you've added, how far gone your health was to begin with. There's lots of factors, but don't get discouraged that it takes time. You didn't get to this condition overnight either. So it takes time to do it. And you're going to get there in a much simpler, easier, and mentally less taxing way if you just go one thing at a time. I think that's great advice.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Thank you so much for sharing your medical knowledge, your cancer knowledge, your digestion knowledge, and just your passion with everyone today. I think there's a lot of great little nuggets in here, and, focus on the basics, add something, start somewhere. All of these things are so simple, and yet these are the things that really move the needle. So thank you so much for sharing all of this today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun, and I'm sure everyone got a lot out of it. So thank you so much to everyone out there. We'll catch you again on future episodes.
Sounds good.
Did you know I also work one-on-one with clients? I approach solving health challenges like I approached solving crimes, by conducting a thorough investigation into your case. Sadly, hundreds of millions of people in the US have insulin resistance, prediabetes, and diabetes, and the vast majority have no idea. I'm here to fix that. If you struggle with low energy, stubborn weight, hypertension, sleep disturbances, or any other undesired symptoms, let's talk. All you have to do is schedule a free call. The link will be in the show notes. And no, you do not need to live near me.